They planned to dump me in assisted living for my money, but the secret envelope destroyed their scheme. I knew something was wrong the moment Jacob's hand clamped around my wrist, squeezing until the skin burned under his fingers. He yanked me toward the kitchen like I weighed nothing, snarling over his shoulder at me to move faster. "You walk like a corpse," he said, not even bothering to hide the disgust in his voice. "If you die sooner, it actually helps our taxes." I tried to steady my breathing, but the humiliation spread through me faster than the pain. Faye stood by the counter with her arms crossed, tapping her nails against her sleeve like she was waiting for a package that was late. Faye slapped my wrist so hard the sting shot up my arm. "God, you are pathetic," she snapped. "A dog listens better than you." They laughed in the background through his phone, a chorus of cruelty he had invited into the room. Jacob shoved a set of documents into my chest with enough force to make me stumble back a step. "Sign the pension transfer," he said. "Every cent goes to me from now on." My heart knocked painfully against my ribs. "I need part of it for my medication," I whispered. I did not raise my voice because in that house, raised voices only made things worse. Jacob stepped closer until I could feel his breath on my cheek. "You sign," he said, "or I pack your crap and dump you outside the cheapest nursing home tonight." Faye rolled her eyes and muttered, "It will save us money on food if she goes there anyway." Jacob forced me to stand in the center of the kitchen, my back aching, my legs trembling, and every time I shifted my weight, he barked at me to stand still. 25 minutes passed in slow, burning humiliation. Logan kept filming. Faye kept muttering about how much trouble I caused. Jacob kept watching me like a predator waiting for weakness. Before I tell you what happened next, let me slip in something from my heart, because stories like mine are swallowed too often in silence. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. When Jacob finally shoved the pen toward me again, something inside me resisted, a small flicker of self-respect I thought the years had stripped away. "No," I said. My voice was thin, shaking, but it was the first truth I had spoken aloud in that house in a long time. Jacob's face twisted, the way it used to when he was a child denied a toy, only sharper now, meaner, poisoned with entitlement. He put both hands on my shoulders and shoved with a strength that shocked me. My body lurched backward, my feet scraping uselessly against the floor, and then my back hit the edge of the porch railing, and the shock shot straight through my hip as I fell onto the cold boards beneath me, my palms slapping the cold ground as my hips screamed in protest. Logan leaned over me with his phone, angling it for a clearer shot. "Content gold," he said. "Grandma just glitched hard." Faye stood above me and shrugged. "If she broke something," she said, "that is her problem." I tried to push myself upright, but the pain shot through my side again and I sank down, my breath shaking uncontrollably. Jacob stepped around me like I was a bag someone left on the floor. "Get up," he snapped. "Or stay there. Makes no difference to me." They left the kitchen one by one, Jacob first, then Faye, then Logan, still filming and laughing. The door to the hallway shut, and the sudden quiet hit me harder than their words. I lay on the tiles, unable to stand, unable to stop shaking, feeling as though the room had grown colder by the second. I did not know how long I stayed there, listening to the muffled sounds of their voices fading down the hall. I focused on breathing through the pain, but even my breath felt stolen from me, shallow and unsteady. It might have been minutes, or longer. Time bends when dignity is broken. I heard footsteps outside the back door, quick and sharp, and then a voice I recognized, Marlene Pierce, my neighbor. The door swung open fast, and she gasped when she saw me on the floor. "Michelle? Oh my God." She dropped to her knees beside me, her hands warm and steady on my arm. "What did they do to you?" Her voice trembled with something I had not felt in years, genuine concern. She slid her arm under my shoulders and helped me sit up, moving slowly so she would not hurt me more. "You are coming with me," she said, "right now." I did not argue. I did not have the strength to. I let her lift me gently, and for the first time that day, I felt the smallest pulse of safety. faint but real, beating through the fear. When Marlene settled me onto her couch, the cushion felt softer than anything I had sat on in years, and for a moment, the gentleness of it made my eyes sting. She fussed in the kitchen for water and ice, but my mind drifted somewhere else entirely, pulled backward by memories that had been gathering dust in the quieter corners of my life. Pain has a strange way of loosening the knots around moments we wish we had forgotten, and as I lay there, hip throbbing with each breath, pieces of the past rose to the surface like debris after a storm. People always assume cruelty begins on the day someone hits you, pushes you, screams at you. But the truth is, cruelty usually starts small, almost invisible, seated in comments that seem childish, unreasonable, or absurd until you realize those small seeds grew into the bitterness standing above you years later. Jacob was only 12 the first time he told me he hated me. He had come home begging for a pair of basketball shoes, the kind every boy in his grade seemed to want that year. And when I told him $300 was too much, he threw himself on the floor and screamed that I had killed his dream. The strange part was that Jacob did not even play basketball. He had no interest in sports at all. He only wanted the shoes because his friends had them, and the idea that I would not spend what we did not have made him furious. He carried that fury into his teenage years like a badge of honor. At 17, when his girlfriend broke up with him after 2 months of drama I had stayed far away from, he stood in the kitchen with tears still on his cheeks and accused me of ruining his life. "You embarrassed me," he said. "She dumped me because you are poor." He was not ashamed of how cruel the words were. He was ashamed of me. The resentment hardened over the years, turning into something sharper. At 23, after losing another job because he argued with the manager, he came home slamming doors and shouting that if I had real money, he would not be struggling. He spoke like I had cheated him out of some birthright he imagined he deserved. Every mistake he made somehow became my fault, and the more he failed, the more he sharpened the edge he held against me. But nothing prepared me for the woman he married, because Faye brought her own brand of disdain into my life, one that was colder, stranger, and built on reasons that made even less sense. Faye disliked me from the first week she visited our home. She would stare at my wedding ring as though it polluted the air around her. Once, while I folded laundry, she told me the ring held dead energy and was bad for the house. She said my husband's memory made the rooms feel small. When she walked past the framed photo of him on my bedroom table, she wrinkled her nose and said it ruined the aesthetic she wanted. One day, she even told me she felt disrespected because I had not called her ma'am. She was younger than Jacob, half my age, yet somehow she believed I owed her a title she had not earned. When I refused, gently but firmly, she added it to her growing list of imaginary offenses. And then there was Logan, a child who could have grown kind if he had been taught kindness. Instead, he inherited the worst from both his parents. When he played games until 3 in the morning, and I knocked softly on his door to ask him to lower the volume, he spun around in his chair and shouted, "You are a useless antique. Even an air purifier does more than you." He was 13. When I asked him to rinse a plate he had left on the counter, he looked at me as though I had insulted him and muttered, "That is slave work." To him, I was not a grandmother. I was an inconvenience. Something to avoid, something to exploit, something disposable. Despite everything, I kept trying. No one ever sees that part. In 2010, when Jacob fell behind on his credit cards, I quietly emptied what little savings I had to pay them off. When Logan was small, and Faye was too exhausted after a few hours at the nail salon, I watched him for entire weekends, cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry without a single thank you. I did the groceries, scrubbed bathrooms, shoveled snow, made dinner whether they bothered to show up or not. I kept telling myself it was just a difficult season. But sitting on Marlene's couch with ice on my hip, I finally saw the truth. There was no season, only a pattern. They treated me poorly because they believed I existed to absorb it. And they had never intended to stop. Marlene helped me settle deeper into the sofa, propping a pillow behind my back to ease the pressure on my hip, and for a moment I simply breathed, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. She noticed the old photo album that had slipped from my bag when she carried me in earlier, its corner bent, the spine cracked where it had hit the floor. She reached down to retrieve it, brushing dust from the cover. "Do you want me to put this somewhere safe?" she asked. I nodded, not because the album mattered to anyone else, but because it mattered to me. It was one of the few things I had carried through every move, every argument, every year of quietly enduring the people who lived under my roof. When she lifted it, a small tear along the inside, leather binding widened, releasing something pale and folded from a slit I had never noticed before. Marlene frowned, leaning closer. "Michelle, there's something inside your album." My stomach tightened. "Inside?" I whispered. She slid her fingers carefully along the gap until a tightly stitched flap opened slightly, revealing the edge of a sealed envelope yellowed by time. It looked as though someone had intentionally hidden it stitched beneath a layer of fabric that only years of wear had now loosened. Marlene eased it free, her brow lifting. "This wasn't meant to fall out," she murmured. "Someone put it there on purpose." Her voice softened as she handed it to me. "Do you want to open it?" My fingers trembled as they touched the brittle paper. The handwriting across the front was unmistakable. My husband's, Raymond's, steady and deliberate, the writing of a man who always thought 3 steps ahead of everyone else. I felt the world tilt slightly as I broke the seal. Here is a 130-word version, keeping the emotional weight, the twist, and the logic intact, while removing repetition and descriptive excess. The first thing inside was a savings booklet I had never seen. The deposits went back more than 20 years, all made quietly, steadily, until the balance was far beyond anything I ever believed we had. Raymond had been setting money aside for me, not us for me. Beneath it lay stock certificates from companies that were once small but were now powerful giants, every share in my name. More documents followed. Investment forms from the early 90s, accounts he had grown in silence while I thought we were merely living modestly. He had been building a safety net long before I realized I would need one. But the shock came when Marlene pulled out an old flash drive, hidden, intentional, and waiting for the moment I would finally uncover the truth. Raymond had taped a note to it that simply read, "Keep this safe." Marlene handed it to me carefully. "Do you know what's on it?" she asked. I shook my head. My heartbeat felt slow and heavy as she plugged it into her laptop. A single audio file appeared. Raymond's voice came through first, tired but clear, the way he used to sound when he thought I was asleep. "Jacob," he said, "this is not appropriate." Then Jacob's voice followed, young, impatient, full of that same selfish certainty he carried into adulthood. "It's just insurance, Dad. If Mom dies earlier, we can at least get something out of it." My breath halted. Raymond's voice sharpened with disbelief. "You talk like you want her gone." Jacob laughed softly, unbothered. "Well, she'll die anyway. Why not profit?" I felt the blood drain from my face. Marlene looked at me as though she feared I might break apart, but I was too stunned to move. My son had spoken about me like a liability even then, long before the cruelty became obvious. My husband had recorded the conversation, and he had hidden it. There were documents beneath the flash drive, tax forms with my name forged in places I had never signed. 8 years of filings showing deductions and claims I had never authorized. Jacob had used my identity to evade taxes, shifting his financial mess onto me. There were bank statements, 2 copies Raymond must have quietly gathered before his health failed, showing monthly charges Faye had made, using my card, salon visits, online shopping, meal deliveries she pretended she paid for herself. The totals made my head spin. Finally, at the bottom of the envelope lay a letter folded so many times it had softened at the edges. I opened it gently. Raymond's handwriting swept across the page in familiar strokes. "Michelle," it read, "if you are reading this, then the fear I carried in the last years of my life has become real. Jacob is no longer the boy we raised. I saw it in him before you did. If he ever becomes the man I worried he might, do not try to save him alone. Use the law. It is the only road that protects you. I love you. Choose yourself. I sat frozen, the envelope open in my lap, Raymond's words settling over me like a revelation I had waited too long to hear. My husband had not only seen Jacob's darkness, he had tried to shield me from it. He had offered me a map out of the hell I had accepted as family. And now, finally, I understood what I had to do. Marlene insisted I stay on her couch with a blanket over my knees while she checked something on her phone. She kept glancing between me and the window facing her porch, her expression tightening in ways that made my pulse rise. I asked her twice what was wrong, but she only bit her lip and said, "Michelle, I need to show you something, but I do not want you to panic." That phrase alone made my stomach twist. She opened the security app linked to her front door camera, the one she installed last year after someone kept stealing her packages, and tapped on the feed from earlier that morning. The screen lit up, and there I was, small, bent, trembling, standing in my own doorway while Jacob towered over me with that cold impatience he saved just for me. I had lived the moment, yet watching it from the outside made it feel violent in an entirely different way. Logan stood behind him, phone lifted, recording as if it was entertainment. Faye leaned against the wall, sipping from a mug, her robe hanging open, half listening, half bored. Then the shove came. I watched my body fall backward, arms instinctively reaching for balance that never came. Logan's laughter hit me harder than the impact on the porch floor. Marlene flinched beside me. Faye, in the video, poured herself more coffee while Jacob glanced down at me, only long enough to say something I could not hear from the camera's microphone. Watching myself lie there, motionless, triggered a wave of nausea so sudden I pressed my hand to my chest. Marlene gave me a moment. Then she whispered, "There's more." Logan was streaming this. He did not know his Discord server saves everything. She opened a second file. The second video began with Logan's voice, bright with cruelty. "Watch this, losers. Grandma's glitching again." He turned the camera to Jacob. "Do it again, Dad. Push her. This is gold." Jacob, annoyed but not disturbed, shoved me out of the frame. A thud sounded. Faye muttered, "Honestly, old people break so easily. It's like watching overripe fruit." She sipped her coffee again. Jacob's voice followed, sharper. "She signs or she goes. I don't care which." Logan laughed. "Content peak. Do it again." Marlene paused the video because my breath had grown uneven. "Michelle," she said, her voice trembling with anger she was trying to suppress. "They posted this as entertainment. They posted your pain for people to laugh at." I closed my eyes. Shame rose first, old. Familiar shame I had carried for years, but it did not settle. Instead, it trembled, cracked, and beneath it something else surged. Anger. The kind that feels like truth finally waking up. "Play the rest," I said. The camera shook as Logan moved closer to Jacob. "Dad, tell them what you said last night," he prodded. Jacob scoffed. "What? That once I get her damn pension transferred, she's out?" "It's the truth." Faye chimed in from off-screen, irritation dripping from her voice. "Old people belong in facilities, not in my house. Let the government feed her. I'm tired of wasting groceries." Logan angled the phone toward his own face. "We're sending her to the cheapest nursing home tonight if she does not sign." "Dad said so," Jacob added. "Someone has to put her somewhere. I'm not babysitting her for free." Then he turned to my crumpled body. "She better not have broken anything. I'm not paying medical bills." The video ended abruptly. I stared at the frozen screen, unable to speak. Marlene set the phone aside carefully, as if she were afraid that even touching it too harshly might break me further. "Michelle," she whispered, "this is not neglect. This is not a family argument. This is abuse. Elder abuse, coercion, exploitation. Recorded, documented, in their own words." I felt the world around me go quiet, stripped of excuses I had made for them over 20 years. The cruelty was no longer a series of bad days. It was a system, a pattern, a belief that I was theirs to use, discard, profit from. I noticed something else then, something I had missed before. In the first video, when Jacob pushed me, Logan's camera caught Faye's face in the background. She smiled, not broadly, not dramatically, just a faint, upward curve, the kind someone makes when watching a scene unfold exactly the way they want it to. That smile hurt more than the fall. I felt something settle in my chest, a certainty, a line drawn at last. They wanted me gone, I said quietly. Not for space, not for convenience, for money. Marlene nodded, fury reddening her eyes. They bragged about it, she said. They planned it openly. I looked at the videos again. Evidence. Proof. Their own voices tying the noose they had woven with years of entitlement. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something like strength rising in me, strength not borrowed from anyone, not held together by hope, but forged from truth. This, I said slowly, will not save them. This will bury them. Marlene placed a steadying hand over mine. Then let us begin, she whispered. Marlene insisted on staying close to me the next morning, even though I told her she did not have to. She claimed she was only running errands, but she kept glancing at me like she feared I would vanish if she blinked too long. My hip burned with every step, yet something inside me felt unexpectedly steady, like the pain was no longer consuming me, but pushing me forward. She drove me to a quiet office building made of old brick, the kind that looked as though it had seen enough sorrow to no longer be surprised by anything. The sign beside the door read, Harris and Doyle, Elder Rights and Probate. When Harris walked into the small meeting room, he carried a slim folder and an expression that told me he already knew more about me than I wished anyone to know. He shook my hand gently, as though testing whether I might break. Marlene sent me the videos earlier, he said, and the documents. He sat down, opened the folder, and looked at me with a level, uncompromising gaze. Michelle, what they did to you is not just immoral, it is illegal in ways that are going to haunt them for a long time. I swallowed hard. I do not want revenge, I whispered. I want to live without being afraid. You will, he said simply. But understand something. You are not merely positioned to win. With what you have, recordings, financial documents, medical evidence, you are positioned to make them collapse completely. He tapped the folder with a single finger. This is the sort of case lawyers pray to receive, ironclad, undeniable, self-incriminating. They recorded their own downfall. His voice softened just slightly. Michelle, they chose this path. I felt my throat tighten, not with fear, with relief. Harris explained everything with calm, precision, protective orders, emergency asset freezes, the steps required to move my pension out of Jacob's reach, upcoming interviews with investigators. With every sentence, I felt the weight that had been pressing on my chest for decades begin to ease, not disappear, but lift enough for me to finally fill my lungs properly. When we were done, he walked me to the door. You will not face them alone again, he said. Not in court, not anywhere. I promise you that. I nodded, unable to speak, and stepped into the sunlight with Marlene holding my elbow as though I were precious cargo. That night, I made my decision. I would leave Jacob's house for good. I waited until the street grew quiet, until the windows across the neighborhood darkened. Marlene stood beside me in the driveway of her home, a duffel bag at her feet, the only bag I carried. I had lived in that house for so many years that leaving it should have felt like tearing myself apart. But standing there in the cool air, I realized something surprising. I did not feel sorrow. I felt something closer to clarity, like stepping out of a burning building I had convinced myself was warm. I did not leave a note. They would not have read it. Or if they did, they would have mocked it. Silence was my final word to them, and it was louder than any explanation could be. Marlene drove me to an extended-stay motel she insisted on paying for until Harris secured safer housing. The room was small, but it had a clean bed, a working lock, and no voices waiting to belittle me. When the door clicked shut behind me, I stood in the dark for several minutes, letting the stillness wrap around me. For the first time in years, I did not have to brace myself for footsteps in the hallway or fists knocking on my door. I sat on the bed and let the quiet seep into my bones. The next morning, Harris had arranged an appointment for me with a physical therapist to look at the bruising on my hip. The therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Lynette, examined the swelling gently and said I was lucky nothing had fractured. She taught me how to shift my weight, how to take pressure off the injured area, how to walk without grinding the pain further into the joint. Each movement felt like dragging myself through fire, but for the first time, there was a purpose behind the pain. Your body remembers more than you think, Lynette said softly, as she helped me stand straighter. It remembers fear, it remembers hurt, but it also remembers how to heal. I felt something sting behind my eyes. Over the next days, I returned to her clinic, each session pushing me a little further. I learned to lift my leg without wincing, to step down without my breath catching, to stand tall instead of curling into myself like I used to when Jacob's voice thundered through the house. The bruises faded, yellowing, softening, leaving behind only soreness that reminded me of what I had survived. One afternoon, after a long session that left my muscles trembling, Lynette handed me a small progress sheet. "You are getting stronger, Michelle," she said. "You are healing for yourself this time, not for anyone else." Standing there, holding the paper, I realized she was right. I was no longer someone trying to endure another day. I was someone reclaiming pieces of herself she had forgotten existed. Back at the motel, I made myself a cup of tea from the tiny electric kettle on the counter. The steam rose slowly, curling toward the ceiling like a gentle reminder that warmth could exist without pain. I sat by the window and watched the sun set over the parking lot, streaks of orange bleeding into the clouds. For the first time in decades, I felt alive not because someone needed me, not because I was performing survival, but because I finally belonged to myself again. And Jacob, Faye, and Logan had no idea what was coming. Harris called early in the morning, his voice steady with the kind of confidence that settles a storm before it forms. "Michelle," he said, "I have drafted everything. If you are ready, today is the day the balance shifts." I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the thin blanket gathered in my hands. My hip still ached, but the pain no longer felt like a reminder of weakness. It felt like a reminder of why I had to keep moving. "I am ready," I said, and for once, I meant it without hesitation. Marlene drove me to Harris's office again. She waited outside the door with her arms crossed, not out of hostility but protectiveness. Harris greeted me with a firm nod and motioned for me to sit. In front of me lay a thick stack of documents separated into neat sections, marked with yellow tabs that looked like small flags, claiming new territory. "This," he said, tapping the first section, "is your living trust." I stared at the bold letters at the top of the first page, Michelle and Darby Living Trust. My name looked enormous, bigger than my life had felt for years. Harris flipped through the pages slowly, so I could see every clause. "All non-physical assets are being moved into the trust," he explained. "Your savings, the investment accounts your husband left you, the stock portfolio, the Arizona land, everything goes under the trust's legal protection." I ran my fingers across the paper. It felt too clean for the life I had lived. "Who controls the trust?" I asked quietly. "You do," he said, "and only you. And as for Jacob," he turned the page to a line highlighted in bold red, "he is disinherited entirely and permanently. No access, no rights, no challenges allowed." For a moment, my breath stopped. Not from guilt, not from fear, from release. After years of being told I owed him everything, I had finally taken back something that was mine. Harris placed a pen in my hand. I signed each page slowly, deliberately. Every signature felt like a stitch pulling my life back together. When the last signature dried, he closed the folder gently. "You just built a wall no one can tear down," he said. "That is the first layer of your counterstrike." The second folder he opened was slimmer, but heavier in significance. "This," he said, "is the criminal case filing." He slid the documents toward me. On top was a printed still frame from Marlene's security camera, Jacob's hand on my arm, his face twisted in irritation just seconds before he shoved me. I felt no panic looking at it, only certainty. Inside the folder was a detailed report outlining the charges: financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, physical assault, elder abuse, coercion, identity misuse, and tax-related crimes. Harris lifted another sheet. These are the copies of the tax returns filed under your name without your consent. 8 years of fraudulent deductions, hidden accounts, and illegal write-offs. He tapped the signatures on those returns. All forged. All prosecutable. I swallowed. He never thought anyone would check. He never thought you would fight, Harris corrected. He added more evidence, screenshots of Logan's live stream, transcripts of their joking about dumping me in assisted living, Faye's comments, Jacob's threats, recordings from the USB, all cataloged clearly. Together, they formed a net so tight, not even arrogance could slip through. When we file this, Harris said, there will be an investigation. It will move quickly. And it will move hard. Jacob and Faye will not have time to hide anything. I nodded. Do it. He smiled, a small, proud smile. Already did it an hour ago. The third layer was what Harris called the silent strike, though it seemed anything but silent once he explained it. IRS has already been notified, he said. Because the fraudulent activity spans multiple years and involves identity misuse, they will freeze the accounts immediately. And Faye? I asked. Joint accounts freeze with both names, he replied. Her access is gone too. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of that reality sink in. Jacob always believed money was power. Now that power was slipping through his fingers faster than he could grasp it. And Logan? I asked, though my voice wavered slightly. He was still a child, but he had chosen cruelty willingly. Harris folded his hands. Because he recorded and shared abusive content featuring a vulnerable adult, the juvenile division will investigate him. At minimum, mandatory counseling. At worst, legal consequences. The room felt still, heavy, true. Harris leaned forward. Michelle, today is not about destroying them. It is about liberating you, but justice has its own reach. They built their lives on your suffering. Now the law will dismantle those lives piece by piece. I nodded slowly. Good. After signing the final authorization for Harris to move forward, I walked out of the office feeling taller than I had in years, not physically, but in presence. Marlene rushed to my side as though expecting me to collapse. Instead, I touched her arm lightly. I am fine, I said. You look different, she whispered. I feel different. That afternoon, Harris called again. His voice was crisp, almost charged. IRS processed the emergency freeze, he said. Their accounts are locked. I imagined Jacob trying to pay for lunch only to have his card declined. I imagined the confusion turning to anger, the anger turning to panic, the panic turning to dread. I imagined Faye shrieking at him, blaming him, spiraling as the realization settled in that the money she felt entitled to was no longer theirs to touch. And by the way, Harris added, Child Services received Logan's live stream recordings. They are reviewing them. That part will move fast, too. I hung up the phone feeling something I had not felt since my husband was alive. Safety. Later that evening, I made myself tea and sat by the motel window, watching cars pass under the streetlights. I felt tired, but not the kind of tiredness that comes from being beaten down. It was the tiredness of rebuilding something worth protecting. Harris had called this the beginning of my freedom. But sitting there with my warm cup, listening to the quiet hum of the night, I realized something else. It was also the beginning of their downfall, and for once, they had built it entirely with their own hands. I was sitting at Marlene's kitchen table when the storm finally broke. The morning was quiet in that particular way that makes you feel something is about to crack open, the air too still, the light too pale. I held my cup with both hands, letting the steam warm my fingers. My hip ached in a predictable way, but I had grown so familiar with the pain that it no longer felt like a punishment. It felt like a chapter marker. Then Marlene's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyes widening slightly. Michelle, it's happening. I followed her to the window overlooking the cul-de-sac. Police cars came into view first, 2 black and white cruisers gliding down the road with slow, deliberate purpose. Then a third car, unmarked but unmistakably official. All three rolled to a stop directly in front of Jacob's house. Even from a distance, I could see the front door swing open violently. Jacob stepped onto the porch, barefoot, shirt wrinkled, anger already rising on his face before he even understood what was happening. Two officers approached him, one reading from a document while the other positioned himself behind Jacob. "Jacob Darby," the officer said, voice flat and unwavering. "You are under arrest for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and tax evasion. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Jacob scoffed at first, a sharp, humorless sound that tried to pass for disbelief. "What? No, this is some kind of mistake. You can't come to my property." "Sir," the officer interrupted, "this property is not yours." Jacob froze. I saw the moment the truth cut through his delusion. The officer took his arm, flipped it behind his back, and snapped on the cuff with a metallic click that traveled down the street like justice made audible. "You can't do this," Jacob barked, voice rising into panic. "She's lying. This is all lies. She's old. She doesn't—" "You have the right to remain silent," the officer replied, unmoved, "and I advise you use it." Watching him struggle, twist, shout, and finally realize that no one was coming to rescue him didn't fill me with triumph. It filled me with clarity. Sometimes the collapse you fear in others is the liberation you need for yourself. Faye ran out next, wearing mismatched slippers and mascara smeared down her cheeks. She grabbed Jacob's arm only for the officer to push her back. "Stay clear, ma'am," he warned. "This isn't my fault," she cried, pointing at Jacob as if she had just discovered him yesterday. "I only did what he told me. I was just going along with it. I didn't abuse anyone." One of the detectives stepped forward, flipping through a clipboard. "Ma'am, your participation in financial exploitation and coercive behavior is documented. You will be taken for questioning." Faye gasped, stumbling backward. "No, please, I didn't hit her, I didn't push her, "No one mentioned pushing," the detective replied. "Interesting that you did." The look on Faye's face twisted into something between guilt and panic. She covered her mouth with both hands, shaking her head as if denial could erase the digital evidence waiting for her. Logan appeared behind them on the porch, hoodie half-zipped, hair sticking up on one side, confusion on his face that lasted all of 5 seconds until an officer approached him with a different tone, firm, measured, not hostile but serious. "Logan Darby?" the officer asked. "We need you to come with us. There's a mandatory psychological review and a hearing related to your online activity." Logan blinked, stunned. "For what? I didn't do anything. It was just a joke. Everyone streams stuff. That's normal." "Streaming the abuse of a vulnerable adult is not normal," the officer said. "Your video is being used as evidence." Logan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time, the boy looked like a child, small, scared, unprepared for the consequences he never thought would find him. Two social workers approached him from behind, one carrying a clipboard, the other motioning gently. "We'll take you to a temporary care facility until the evaluation is complete," one said softly. "My parents are right here," Logan snapped, jerking his arm away. The social worker looked at him sadly. "Your parents are being detained." Logan froze, his face collapsing into shock. For all his cruelty, he had still believed his world was unshakable. Seeing him realize it wasn't felt like an echo of all the moments they had made me feel small, helpless, trapped. Except this time, the echo wasn't inside my chest, it was surrounding their home. While the officers guided Logan toward the waiting van, detectives entered the house. I could see them through the open door, pointing at paperwork, photographing rooms, logging items. An evidence tag strip went up across the doorway. Jacob yelled from the back of the squad car, banging his cuffed wrists against the seat in some useless attempt at resistance. "You can't take my son! You can't take my house!" "It's not your house," one officer corrected again. Faye sank onto the lawn, sobbing into her hands, her shoulders trembling. She whispered, "This can't be happening over and over," like a spell she hoped would rewind reality. Neighbors began stepping outside, people who had watched, who had heard, who had whispered. Mrs. Lorne from across the street shook her head and muttered, "I always wondered how they treated poor Michelle." Mr. Talley added, "Saw them yelling at her more than once. Knew something was off." And Marlene beside me said quietly, "People knew. They were just waiting for someone brave enough to stop it." I didn't respond. I kept watching. Not with cruelty, not with pleasure, just with the full, still, steady weight of someone who has carried too much for too long and is finally allowed to set it down. By late afternoon, the officers finished their sweep. One of them hammered a notice onto the door. Property seized pending legal review. Another taped a thick envelope of legal documents to the railing bank freezes, eviction orders, custody directives. Jacob was gone. Faye was gone. Logan was gone. The house that had never felt like mine stood hollow and quiet, stripped of their noise, their contempt, their shadows. Marlene touched my arm. "How do you feel?" she asked. I looked at the house, the porch, the windows, the place where I had lost myself inch by inch. "Like I finally woke up," I said. And the truth was, I had. I had just finished straightening the small rug near my door when I heard the knock, soft at first, then harder, then desperate. The kind of knock that carries the weight of someone who has run out of doors to try. I stood still for a moment, hands resting on the edge of the counter, listening to the uneven rhythm. A part of me recognized it immediately, the same way your bones recognize the shape of old storms long before the sky darkens. Then came the voice. "Mom, please, open the door." Jacob. The name didn't tighten my chest the way it once did. It didn't make my breath stutter or send tremors through my fingers. It simply arrived inside me like a cold wind through a window I had forgotten to close. I walked toward the door slowly, not hesitant, just deliberate. My hip ached, but the ache felt familiar now, something that belonged to me, not something that belonged to him. When I unlocked the door and pulled it open, Jacob was exactly where I expected him to be, on his knees in the hallway, eyes swollen, cheeks streaked with salt. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, he was still the same broad-shouldered man who once towered over me, but something inside him had shrunk. Pride, certainty. The armor he wore when he believed cruelty was strength. "Mom," he choked, lifting his face. "I have nothing left. Nothing. Please, help me." His hands trembled as he reached toward me, then stopped halfway, as if even he wasn't sure he deserved to be close enough to touch me. I could smell the stale sweat on his shirt, see the exhaustion etched into the shape of his mouth. He had aged 10 years in the span of a week. I didn't step back. I didn't step forward. I simply looked at him the way a person looks at a stranger who carries the outline of someone they once loved. "Mom," he whispered again. "I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you, but I'm your son. You're all I have left." He waited for me to crumble. He waited for the familiar softness, the automatic forgiveness, the quick surrender. He waited for the mother he had shaped into a servant of his anger. But that woman was gone. I straightened my spine, letting my weight settle evenly as Lynette had taught me. My voice, when it came, surprised even me, not loud, not cold, just steady. "Stand up, Jacob." He hesitated, then rose slowly to his feet. His shoulders slumped, his hands hung useless at his sides. He looked like a man standing in the ruins of his own making. "I'm sorry," he said again, voice breaking. "I was stupid. I was angry. I didn't mean to." I raised a hand gently, stopping him. "Jacob, every choice you made, you meant. Maybe not the consequences, but the choices, you meant them." He swallowed hard, searching my face for softness, for weakness, anything he could use as a foothold. "You're my mother," he said. "That has to count for something." "It does," I replied. "It counts for what I am about to say." He straightened slightly, hope flickering in his eyes. Then I spoke. "Your father warned you." His mouth parted, confusion replacing the faint spark of hope. I continued. "He warned you that the way you talked about me, the way you thought about me, would one day lead you down a path you couldn't escape. He saw what I refused to see. And now the law," I paused, letting the truth settle between us like a stone. We'll teach you the rest. Jacob blinked rapidly, like he could wipe the words away. Mom, no, please, I'm begging you. I forgive you, I said. His breath caught. For a moment, pure relief flooded his expression. Then I finished. But I will never let you hurt me again. The relief in his eyes shattered instantly. He reached for me one last, desperate, instinctive reach. But I stepped back into my apartment, onto a floor that belonged only to me, in a life he had no place in anymore. Mom, please, he whispered, voice breaking. Just let me in. One night, one meal. I don't have anyone. You have the consequences of your actions, I said softly. And they have been waiting a long time to meet you. His face crumpled, truly crumpled. And for the first time, I saw my son, not the man who demanded my pension, not the man who shoved me, not the man who laughed while I lay in pain. I saw a man undone by the truth he built with his own hands. I loved you, Jacob, I said, even when you forgot how to love anyone else. But love isn't permission, not anymore. And then, with a calmness I had earned inch by inch, bruise by bruise, year by year, I brought my hand to the door. He shook his head violently. Mom, don't please, don't do this. I already did, I whispered. And I closed the door. Not slamming it, not throwing it shut with anger, just closing it with the gentleness of someone laying down the final page of a long, painful book. The click of the latch echoed through the hallway and into my bones. On the other side of the door, I heard Jacob slide down the wall and break into sobs, raw, aching, the kind that comes when a person realizes there is no one left to blame. I stood there for a moment, my hand on the wood, eyes closed, breathing in the silence that was finally, fully mine. Then I walked back to my small kitchen. I filled the kettle. I chose the chamomile blend Marlene had given me. I poured the hot water slowly, watching the steam curl upward like something releasing itself. I carried the cup to the window, where the late afternoon light spilled across the table in soft gold. Children were playing in the courtyard below. A couple walked their dog. Life moved gently, without cruelty, without fear. I sat down, lifted the cup, and let the warmth seep into my palms. And for the first time in 20 years, I whispered to myself, without doubt, without pain, without shame, this is the life I deserved all along. Thank you, my dear listeners, for staying with me through this long, painful, and finally peaceful journey. Stories like mine aren't easy to tell, and they're not always easy to hear, but they matter. Because somewhere out there, another grandmother is sitting quietly, thinking her suffering is invisible. Somewhere, another woman is being pushed aside, spoken over, dismissed, or forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, hearing this story will remind her that she is not alone and she is not powerless. If this story touched you, helped you breathe a little deeper, or reminded you that justice still finds its way even in the darkest corners, I would be so grateful if you joined our family here. Please subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where every week another quiet woman finally gets to speak. Your support helps keep these stories alive, helps them travel further, and helps more hearts hear what they've been needing for years. Thank you for listening and caring. And until the next story, take gentle care of yourself. And remember, wisdom doesn't shout, it remembers. The safe was heavier than I remembered, or perhaps I was weaker than I had ever been. I dragged it across the floor inch by inch until it rested against the cabinet, and then I let it sit in my lap while my breath steadied. The familiar metal dial waited for me, cold beneath my fingertips, and for a moment I hesitated. Ray had guarded this safe with a seriousness that never quite matched his gentle nature. If he hid something here, it was not money, it was truth, and truth, in my life, had always come with a price. But my hands moved on their own, guided by a memory I did not realize I still carried. The 3 numbers he whispered the night before his surgery, when he thought he might not survive. "Just in case, sweetheart," he had said with a tired smile. I had promised him I would never open the safe unless I truly needed it. Tonight, lying bruised and cold on a kitchen floor my own family had abandoned me on, I finally understood what he meant. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of the truth I was about to meet. The lock clicked open with a soft metallic sigh, and the lid lifted smoothly, as if it had been waiting. Inside, neatly arranged as only Ray would arrange them, lay 5 items. The first was a small USB drive, labeled in Ray's handwriting, E-call. The second was a stack of printed photographs, still frames pulled from security footage. The corner of each picture bore the timestamp of a convenience store camera near the road where Ethan's accident happened. But the third item made my throat tighten. Ray's leather-bound journal, the one he always wrote in late at night when he thought I was asleep. I used to tease him about it, calling it his second brain. Now, seeing it there, I felt a chill. If he put it inside the safe, it contained something he believed the world could not handle. I reached for it with trembling hands, but something else beneath it caught my eye, a thick envelope marked, Living Trust Addendum. And beneath the envelope, folded with careful precision, was a letter addressed to me. I opened the USB drive first because it felt lighter than the others. I plugged it into the small laptop Lila had discarded months ago. The screen flickered to life, and then a single audio file appeared. When I pressed play, Ethan's voice filled the room. At first, it was soft, frightened, barely more than breathing. "Tyler. Ty. Please pick up." His breath hitched. I heard cars in the background, gravel shifting, the distant whine of pain. I cannot move. I think my leg is... Tyler, please, come back." A long pause. A sob. A gasp. Then Ethan's voice broke into a whisper I would never be able to forget. "Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me here alone." My hand covered my mouth, but the sound still escaped me, a raw cry, torn from someplace deeper than I ever knew existed. Ethan had called his brother while dying. He had called him, and Tyler never told me. I replayed the message twice, 3 times, each time feeling the truth rip deeper into me. I braced myself before reaching for the second item. The photographs were grainy, but clear enough. The security camera showed the road, the car, the moment of impact, and then Tyler climbing out, stumbling away, leaving Ethan slumped against the dashboard. In one frame, Ethan's hand reached toward the open door, reaching for his brother's retreating figure. Tyler never looked back. I stared at the images until the shapes began to blur. But Ray's journal pulled me back. I opened it to a page marked with a small ribbon. On that page, Ray had written a list of dates, incidents involving Tyler, patterns. Notes about anger that came too quickly, apologies that were too polished, manipulation that grew more calculated each year. He had consulted a behavioral specialist once, quietly, without telling me. Next to the doctor's notes, Ray had written, potential for escalating violence if not monitored. I felt a wave of nausea rise in me. Ray had known. Not everything, but enough. I reached for the envelope next. The Living Trust Addendum was simple, brutally clear. It stated that if Tyler ever emotionally or physically abused me, directly or indirectly, all property and financial authority would revert solely to me. Not shared, not negotiated. Mine alone, with the explicit power to remove him from the home and sever him from the inheritance entirely. Ray had seen the danger years before I did. He had prepared for a day I never imagined would come. Finally, I opened the letter. The paper shook in my hands as I unfolded it. "My Martha," it began, written in Ray's rounded, patient handwriting. "If you are reading this, then something has broken in this family that I tried so hard to hold together." My eyes blurred, but I kept reading. "I know what Tyler did the night Ethan died. He left him. Ethan tried to crawl out of that car. He called for help. Tyler ran home and lied to us. I did not tell you because I was terrified of losing both our sons in one night. I buried the truth, hoping time would soften the memory. But time only sharpened Tyler, made him harder, colder." I pressed my hand against my chest. "I am haunted by what I did not do. I am haunted by the day you will need protection from the child we failed to save from himself. If Tyler ever harms you or allows you to be harmed, you must use these documents. Do not hesitate. This is my last promise to you." My tears fell onto the ink, but the words didn't blur. Ray had seen danger long before it reached me, and now, lying bruised and trembling beside the open safe, I saw it too, not as a mother blinded by love, but as a woman betrayed by the son she raised. Tyler was not simply cruel, he was dangerous, and I was done pretending otherwise. With shaking fingers, I reached for my phone and dialed the number Ray had written at the bottom of his letter. Donovan Pierce, attorney. Trusted. For emergencies. When the line rang and a steady voice answered, I found my own voice at last. Mr. Pierce, I whispered, it's time. I never imagined the truth would break open on a night filled with music, gossip, and the smell of catered barbecue. But life has a way of choosing the most public moments for its most private reckonings. Jenny had spent the entire week bragging about her new home celebration, as if redecorating a house she barely paid for was an achievement worthy of a parade. She invited neighbors, co-workers, the pastor's wife, even Lila's teachers, determined to prove she was a woman of rising status. She wanted admiration. She wanted envy. She wanted the kind of validation only a crowd could give. That was why Donovan chose this night, and when he arrived calm, composed, carrying a small rolling case, he looked like a man entering a courtroom, not a backyard party. I was seated near the back, alone at a patio table, ignored as usual. Tyler didn't even nod at me. Jenny had placed me behind a group of potted plants, almost as if she hoped the shrubs would swallow me whole. At exactly 7 o'clock, Donovan walked through the open sliding door and cleared his throat. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Jenny blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, this is a private event, she began, smoothing her dress with a tight smile. You must be at the wrong. I'm exactly where I need to be, Donovan said, lifting the latch on his rolling case. My name is Donovan Pierce, attorney of record for Mrs. Martha Langford, the legal owner of this property. I'm here to present documents regarding ownership and pending violations. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tyler froze mid-sip of his beer. Jenny's smile collapsed like wet paper. What are you talking about? She demanded. This is ridiculous. Martha doesn't even, she isn't. But Donovan had already turned toward the blank patio wall. He set up a small projector, connected a USB, and the first image flickered onto the surface, the grainy footage of the car accident. Not the crash itself, the aftermath. Tyler stumbling out. Tyler backing away, Tyler running, and Ethan's hand reaching through the shattered window, grasping at nothing but fading hope. Gasps filled the yard. Someone dropped a glass. A woman whispered, "Dear God." The video continued, frame by frame, step by step. Tyler, my son, leaving his brother to die alone. Turn that off. Tyler barked, lunging forward, but Donovan stepped aside, calm as a surgeon. There is more. The audio began next. Ethan's broken voice echoed through the speakers, trembling, weak, so full of terror I could feel it in my bones. Ty, please, come back. I can't move. A mother in the front row covered her mouth and burst into tears. Another woman, whose son had died in a farm accident years ago, stood up and pointed at Tyler. How could you leave a child to die? Her voice shook with fury. What kind of human does that? Tyler's face drained of color. Jenny grabbed his arm, but her hand slipped away as though even her fingers recoiled at the truth. Stop this! Tyler shouted. This is personal. This is twisted. This, Donovan said, lifting Ray's journal, is documented. He opened it and began reading passages. Not long ones, just enough. Notes about Tyler's escalating violence, signs Ray tried to address, warnings he took to a specialist. The crowd listened, horrified. Neighbors who once praised Tyler's friendliness now looked at him like they had never truly seen him before. Donovan closed the journal and placed it aside. Then, he lifted the legal addendum, the one Ray had created long before his death. This document, he announced, projecting it onto the wall, states clearly that if Tyler Langford commits emotional or physical abuse toward his mother, or allows others to do so, the entirety of the estate, including this property, revert solely to Mrs. Martha Langford, effective immediately. People began whispering. About me. For the first time in years, they were looking at me, not through me. Jenny's friend Paula whispered loudly. They made her sleep in the storage room. Another added, I saw Jenny throw out her photo albums last week. I thought it was odd. Donovan lifted the last item, the letter from Ray. This is from Mr. Langford, he said. Written after he learned the truth of Ethan's death. I squeezed the arms of my chair. The yard grew silent enough that I could hear the hum of the projector. Ray knew, Donovan said. He knew Tyler left Ethan. He kept it quiet out of fear, not forgiveness. Jenny staggered backward, bumping into the dessert table. Tyler stared at me, glared at me with a look that mixed rage with panic. You're ruining everything, he hissed. You had no right to open that safe. Before I could speak, another voice rose from the back of the yard. She had every right. Heads turned. A tall, weathered man stepped forward, holding his cap in his hands. His voice shook. It's time they all know, Jenny gasped. Dad? What are you doing here? Her father. A man she rarely mentioned. A man whose face I recognized vaguely from the one time he visited years ago. He looked straight at Tyler, then at me. I saw you that night, he said. The night Ethan died. I was working late, fixing the lights at the store. I saw you run from the car. I saw Ethan trying to move. Jenny covered her ears. Dad, stop it, stop. I kept quiet, he continued, his voice cracking under the weight of years. Because Jenny loved you. Because I wanted her to finally have something good. I thought, maybe you'd change. He shook his head. But you didn't. You only got worse. Silence wrapped the yard again, heavy, suffocating, final. Tyler's mask cracked. Anger twisted his features into something almost unrecognizable. Mom, he shouted, stepping toward me. How dare you do this to me? To us? After everything I've done for you? For the first time in months, maybe years, I stood on my own 2 feet. My hip trembled, but I stood. Not tall, not strong, but unbroken. I looked him in the eye, steady and calm, in a way that seemed to unnerve him more than any scream could. You want to know how? I said. Because the truth waits. Even when we don't want to speak it. Even when it hurts. Even when we're afraid. I felt the entire yard lean in as I spoke. And tonight, I said softly, the truth finally arrived. Tyler's jaw clenched. He didn't speak again. He couldn't. The truth had already spoken for him. And everyone heard it. The yard was still filled with echoing whispers when the police cars pulled up, their lights washing the fence in flashes of red and blue. I had seen those lights before in this town during accidents, arrests, nights when the quiet prairie turned sharp, but never for my own family. Officers stepped through the gate with a firm purpose, the kind that leaves no room for confusion. The lead officer asked, Tyler Langford? Tyler stiffened, jaw tight, eyes darting between the crowd and the officers as if searching for an escape route that no longer existed. What's this about? He demanded, though his voice cracked, betraying him. The officer read calmly from the clipboard. You are being taken into custody under 4 charges: involuntary manslaughter related to the death of Ethan Langford, hit and run, causing fatal injury, fabrication of evidence following the incident, and felony elder abuse. People gasped. Several backed away from him. It was strange to watch how quickly a crowd shifts around a man once admired, how the body instinctively recoils from something it no longer wants to be associated with. This is insane, Tyler shouted, but the officers were already moving toward him. He tried to take a step back, but Donovan's voice cut through the air. There's video evidence, audio evidence, signed testimony, and a legal confession withheld for years. Tyler spun toward me, fury twisting his features. You did this. You ruined my life. I held his gaze, steady, calm. No, I said softly. You did. When they placed the cuffs on him, the yard fell so silent I could hear the faint rustle of leaves from the cottonwood tree near the fence. One by one, people turned away from him, neighbors who once shared beers with him, parents who once complimented his helpfulness, teachers who once praised him. They looked at him now the way people look at something rotten left too long in the sun. As they led him out, someone muttered, "Monster." Someone else whispered, "Poor Ethan." Another said, "I can't believe we didn't see it." But I had seen it. Too late, but I had seen it. Jenny tried to follow the officers, shouting after them, but another officer stepped in front of her. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you are not under arrest at this time, but you will need to come in for questioning regarding withholding evidence and participation in elder neglect." The color drained from her face. "I what? I didn't do anything." "You knew," the officer replied. "We have statements indicating you were aware of the treatment toward Mrs. Langford and participated in it." Jenny's friends, women who had spent the past hour bragging and gossiping beside her, began quietly slipping out the back gate, avoiding eye contact as if abandoning a sinking ship. One whispered, "She let her mother-in-law sleep in a storage room?" "God, no." Another shook her head. "I'm not getting involved with that family again." Within minutes, Jenny stood practically alone, trembling, trying to call someone, anyone, but every call went to voicemail. Her social circle, so carefully curated, fell apart in a single night. And for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in her face. Fear, not anger, not contempt, fear. But the one who surprised me most was Lila. While her parents shouted and struggled and tried to maintain whatever crumbling dignity they had left, she stood frozen near the edge of the yard, the blue light flickering against her pale face. She wasn't filming. She wasn't smirking. She wasn't mocking. She was staring at the projection still frozen on the wall, Ethan's hand reaching through the shattered window. I watched her swallow hard, her lips trembling as she whispered, almost inaudibly, "He was calling for help." She covered her mouth with both hands. "He was calling Uncle Tyler." A teacher approached her cautiously. "Honey, let's step away from the screen." But Leela shook her head, eyes overflowing. "He left him," she cried, choking on the words. "Dad left him. Uncle Ethan. He was in pain, and he left him." Her tears poured freely now, messy and unrestrained, the kind children can't hide when they finally see something horrible clearly for the first time. One of the officers approached gently. "Miss Lila, your school will be contacted. There will be a temporary suspension for recording and mocking your grandmother, and we strongly recommend psychological counseling." Lila didn't fight it. She didn't argue. For the first time, she didn't hide behind sarcasm or screens. She simply whispered, I didn't know what he did." Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and her face crumpled. "Grandma," she sobbed, "I didn't know what we were doing to you." Her voice cracked apart like thin ice. I did not move toward her. My heart ached, but the lesson had to land. Her tears weren't punishment, they were awakening. The first one in that house to finally see me as human. Lila cried harder. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And for once, her mother didn't drag her away. Jenny stood still, wiping her own tears, realizing too late what kind of home she had helped build. The party had dissolved into chaos, judgment, whispered prayers, and heavy truths. But for the first time in years, I stood quietly at the center of it, not invisible, not dismissed, not erased, seen. Justice had finally opened its eyes. The house felt different the morning after everything ended. Not quieter silence had always lived here, but lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled after years of holding in a truth too heavy to bear. When the officers returned the keys to me, placing them gently in my palm, I stood in the doorway for a long moment, letting the weight of what had happened settle into something real. This was my home again. Not a cage, not a storage room, not a place where I had to shrink to survive. Mine. I walked through each room slowly. The living room still held the faint scent of last night's panic, but I opened the windows wide and let the sharp Nebraska wind sweep through. I put Ray's flannel shirt back in its rightful drawer. I rehung Ethan's picture in the hallway, right where the morning light touches it first. In the kitchen, I polished the old cedar table until it gleamed, the way Ray used to do before family dinners. With each small act, I felt a part of myself returning pieces I hadn't realized I'd lost. In the weeks that followed, I used the financial authority Ray left me exactly as he would have wanted. I restored the house room by room, not as a monument to him but as a promise kept. Then I visited the bank with Donovan and established something I had dreamed about for years but never felt worthy enough to build. The Ethan Foundation, a small fund to help local kids afford after-school programs, tutoring, or just a safe place to go when life grew hard. Ethan used to bring extra sandwiches to school, just in case someone forgot theirs, and I wanted that gentle heart of his to live on in something bigger than tragedy. The town began treating me differently, not with pity but with a respect so long overdue it almost felt foreign. People stopped by with casseroles, with cards, with quiet apologies for not seeing what had been happening behind my closed doors. I accepted their kindness with gratitude, but not as a woman broken, instead as a woman rebuilt. But the final chapter, the one that mattered most, happened in a small visitation room at the county detention center. The guards led me in, and I sat down across from Tyler. For a moment, he didn't look like the man who mocked me on the kitchen floor. He looked like the little boy who used to run up the porch steps carrying drawings he made just for me. But illusions fade quickly, and when he lifted his head, the weight of the choices he had made settled over us like winter frost. Tears streaked down his cheeks before he could speak. "Mom," he whispered, voice raw, "I'm sorry. Please, please forgive me. I didn't mean for any of this. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." For a moment, I simply watched him, studying the face I once loved without condition. A face that had lied, abandoned, mocked, and destroyed. A face that had once run away from a dying brother. A face that had laughed while I lay helpless on the floor. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, not cruel, but carved from truth. "You laughed when I was on the ground, Tyler, but you have been lying in your own guilt for 20 years. You left Ethan to die and built your life on top of that grave. You harmed me because facing yourself was harder." He shook his head, crying harder. "I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared." I leaned forward just slightly. "Fear doesn't excuse cruelty. And I didn't create your nightmare. You wrote it yourself, every page, every choice, every lie." He sobbed into his hands, but I did not cross the table. I did not reach out. Some lessons arrived too late for comfort. When the guard opened the door and nodded that my time was up, I stood slowly. Tyler looked up at me one last time, desperate, broken, still searching for a way out of a darkness he had chosen long before I ever opened that safe. I paused at the threshold and said the final truth he needed to hear. "Some nightmares come from demons, but yours, Tyler, came from the mirror." And then I walked out. The sunlight outside was warm against my face, the kind of Nebraska sun that stretches wide across the plains and makes even the oldest bones feel alive again. For the first time in decades, I felt it fully. I stepped forward, not as a victim, not as a burden, but as a woman who finally belonged to herself. I was living again. You know, after all these years, after all the nights I cried quietly into my pillow so no one would hear, after all the times I wondered whether my life still mattered, there is one thing I've learned. Cruelty echoes, but so does truth. And truth always finds its way home. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. From an old woman who once thought her voice no longer carried, it means more than you know. I hope you felt the justice, the healing, and the reminder that no matter how dark a family can become, light still exists for those who refuse to give up on themselves. And if you want to hear more true stories from women like me, women who loved, who lost, who endured, and who finally rose, then I'd be honored to share my porch with you again. So go on, sweetheart, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Stay close, stay kind, and let these stories travel farther than the silence we once lived through. Until next time, this old heart of mine thanks you for listening.